Hello, everyone, and I hope you're enjoying your scheduled e-learning day off. Hope that you've been able to maybe sleep in a little bit or play with some toys. And I hope everything that you've done, our reading, our spelling, our math, and our writing has gone nice and easy for you. So we're going to wrap up our day with a book called I Am Jane Goodall. And while I read, I want you to be finding one fact about Jane that you could write on a lined piece of paper and a complete sentence and then bring back tomorrow when you come to school. So, I am Jane Goodall. Oh, another thing, this is an AR test. So, pay close attention so that tomorrow you can come in and take an AR test. I am Jane Goodall. On my first birthday, my father bought me a cuddly toy chimpanzee named Jubilee. I loved Jubilee. I mean it, loved. I used to carry Jubilee with me everywhere. As I got older, when I lined up all of my toys and played teacher, Jubilee was the one who had his own chair. And then you can see, kiddo, there's some speaking bubbles between Dad and Jane. So I'm going to read those. So Dad says, Jubilee, meet Jane. And Jane, to her class here, is saying, okay, class, now who knows what rabbits like to eat? Yes, Jubilee, correct as always. I didn't just love my toy chimpanzee, though. I loved all animals, even the earthworms I found in the garden. My mom told me that worms would be safer in the garden, so we took them outside and buried them back in their house. So here you can see Mom's got some speaking bubbles to Jane. So Mom is saying, did you bring earthworms inside the house? Jane said, don't worry, Mom, they're safe as can be. And then Jane says, right under my pillow. And you can see Mom's like, ooh. Do you think your mom would like if you brought earthworms into your bed? Probably not. At 5 years old, I was curious to learn how chickens lay eggs, so I crawled into my grandmother's hen house to watch. At first, all the hens were scared of me. Then I decided to crouch in the corner. If I had moved, the hens wouldn't have run away. I was patient, though. Finally, after all hours of waiting, I saw what I was looking for. The hen gave a little wiggle, and plop, there was an egg. It was my first research project. So here, Jane down here is talking to her mom and dad, and she's saying, Mom is saying, where were you? You've been missing for so long. We sent a search party. And Jane says back, you'll never believe where eggs come from. In addition to animals, I also love nature. I named the chestnut tree Nookie, and the breech tree Breech. Breech was my favorite. Thank you, Breech, for letting me read up here. Oh, that was another thing I loved, reading. Back then, my family didn't have a lot of money. To get books, we went to the library. When I was 7 years old, I got a book that would change my life. It was called The Story of Dr. Dolittle. I read it once, then read it again, and then read it a third time before it had to go back to the library. It was about a man who could talk to animals. Would that not be the neatest thing to be able to talk to animals? In the book, there's a parrot who says that if you want to learn how animals talk, you need the power of observation. But what I remembered most is the part where Dr. Dolittle and his animals are being chased and they come to a cliff. Right there, the monkeys joined hands and feet. They became a bridge. Isn't that beautiful? We can accomplish anything by working together. After reading the book, I vowed that I would go to Africa and live among the animals. So then here the animals are talking to each other in the speech bubbles. They're saying, how are we going to cross? And then the monkeys say, a bridge. Quick, make a bridge. By the time I was 12, I had my own nature group, the Alligator Club. My friends and I raised money to help old horses. We took nature walks and wrote down what we saw, or at least I did. And if you wanted to have a high rank in the club, was I the best student? Not at all. Once on school days, it was hard for me to wake up. I didn't like being indoors. But if we were outside or there were animals around, that's when I got excited. So here's Jane and her club, and they're all having a conversation. So the conversation they're having is, you have to be able to recognize 10 dogs, 10 birds, 10 trees, and 5 butterflies or moths. How about I go first? So that was all Jane. And then her friend right here is saying, something tells me she's going to name them all perfectly. And then her other friend right here says, each of us even had our own animal name. Jane was the red animal named after a beautiful butterfly. And then here, Jane is talking about being the best student. And she says, guess how many pets I had? She had a lizard with no legs, a guinea pig, a racing snail, Pickles, the cat, a hamster, and then the dog right here is saying, and Jane is saying, and that didn't include the dogs I looked after, like my favorite Rusty, who liked wearing pajamas. Rusty says, woof. So she had lots of animals. I wanted a job where I could learn more about animals. But back then, if you were a girl, people didn't think that you could be a scientist. They expected girls to become nurses, secretaries, or teachers. I wanted to go to Africa. I wanted to study animals. Luckily, my mom always told me, if you really want something, work hard for it. If you don't give up, you'll find a way. I never forgot that. Soon I had my chance. One of my school friends invited me to visit her family in Kenya. To pay for the trip, I worked as a waitress and hid my money under the carpet. One day, I closed the curtains, counted it all, and so Kenya, and here Jane is saying Kenya is in Africa. So here she's saying, that's right, Africa. And then here she's counting her money and she says, I've got enough. I'm going to Africa. So she's raised enough being a waitress and she's going to get to go to Africa. The trip took 21 days by boat. I was 23 years old. It all seemed like a dream until I saw a giraffe who stared directly at me. It had dark eyes, long lashes, a black tongue, and was chewing thorns. I knew my dream was coming alive. Finally, I was in Africa of Dr. Dolittle. Two months later, my life changed again. Someone told me, if you're interested in animals, you must meet Dr. Leakley, who was an anthropologist, which means he studied how humans lived, and also a paleontologist, which means he studied fossils and bones. At first, he hired me as a secretary, but he was quickly impressed with what I knew about animals, including his own pets. Eventually, Dr. Leakley told me about a new job studying chimpanzees up close. He said going into the forest would be hard. It would be dangerous, but if we could find out how chimps live today, we'd learn more about our own prehistoric ancestors. So here, Dr. Leakley and Jane are speaking to one another. He says, Dr. Lewis Leakley, nice to meet you. Jane says, I'm Jane Goodall. I hear you like animals. And she says, you have no idea. And then down here, they're having another conversation. And she says, I have no college degree, no training, and no expertise, but I want the job. And he says to her, Jane, I've been waiting for you to say that. So I think they're going to work out a deal. For a year, I read everything about chimps. They're always observed in a lab. No one has ever studied them in the jungle where they actually live. I was also told that women couldn't be alone in the forest. They said I needed a guide, plus a companion. My mom offered to come. I was ready. I knew you wouldn't give up. So a companion means like a friend. So they are saying she needed to take somebody with her. So she took her mom. And her mom is telling her she knew she would never give up. I'll never forget the day, July 16th, 1960, the day that she first set foot in what is today Gombe National Park in Tanzania, Africa. At 26 years old, she had finally made it to the home of chimps. It was a place that would change my life. During one of my first explorations, we saw two chimpanzees eating in a tall tree. They noticed us and ran away. The next day, we didn't see any chimps. There were no chimps the day after that either. For months, I tried to get close. They kept running away. Then I started going alone, just me. I'd go into a high area called the peak, and I'd look down with my binoculars. In time, I saw that the chimpanzees would hang out in groups of 6 or fewer. The female chimps would be with the children. The male chimps would be with one another. There wasn't mindless animals. This was a community. So they live in a community like we do. And here she's talking. She says, "This was my secret. Be patient. Learn about how they lived. Slowly move closer and closer." So she's kind of thinking in her head, talking in her head, thinking about how she's going to get close to those chimps. Still, it took nearly a year before I could get within 100 yards of a chimpanzee. One day I came back to camp and found out. So here she's talking to a gentleman. And he says, "One of the male chimpanzees took our food, including your bananas." She says, "Fantastic. That means they're not scared of me now. I bet he'll be back tomorrow." So Jane says, "The next day I waited and I waited. There were no chimps in sight. Then at 4 p.m., I heard a rustling noise by my tent." Remember, p.m. means in the afternoon. So about the time that we're getting either home from school or off the bus, that's when she saw the chimp. It was the large male chimpanzee with a thick beard. And then here, she's naming him. So she names him David Graybeard. That was the name I gave him. Back then, people told me that there was a certain way to study animals and that I shouldn't give the chimpanzees names. They're animals and they should be given numbers, not names. Why? They thought animals didn't have personalities or emotions. They thought if we gave them names, we'd start pretending that they were like us. But that's what no one realized. They were like us. That day, Dave Graybeard took the nuts and the bananas. A month later, he took one hand. Even later, out in the forest, he slowly approached me and checked to see if I had a banana in my pocket. It was one of my proudest moments. Having the other chimpanzees now understand that I wasn't a threat. I was their friend, and they were mine. So her patience has paid off. These chimps are coming around her and realizing that she's not a threat. She's very kind. One time, over time, by seeing the chimpanzees as individuals, I could truly understand them. David was calm, though he liked getting what he wanted. Gulif was easily excited. William was shy, and Old Flo was a strong mother who always would bring her daughter and son. As I watched, I learned one of the coolest things of all. One day, I saw Dave Graybeard stripping leaves from a twig, then sticking the twig into a termite mound. He wasn't just using the twig as a tool. He had made that tool. Before that, scientists thought only humans could make tools. There was no doubt now that these animals were intelligent. So the chimpanzee, Dave Graybeard, what she named him, he needed to get into the termite hole, and he couldn't get in there with his hands because his hands were too big. So he created or made a tool to get down into that termite hole, and that was a big thing because at this time we thought that humans were the only people that made tools, but now we just learned animals are making tools too. Every night I write in my journal about what I observed, and every day I saw the chimpanzees doing the same thing we do, holding hands, tickling, kissing, even patting backs to reassure each other. The more I observed, the more I learned. Soon I had so much information I needed a tape recorder. Then I needed an assistant to help observe all of the other chimpanzee families in the forest. 6 years later, what started with a notepad and binoculars became a full research project. Now I was the one in charge. Today, thanks to our work in Tanzania, the whole world knows that animals have their own personalities and complex relationships. In my life, people told me there was a certain way to do things, a certain way to study animals, a certain way that girls should behave. They told me to follow the rules. Instead, I followed my gut. In your life, it will be easy to see how others are different from you. but there's so much more to gain if you instead see how alike we all are. All of us, all living things, share so much. We have so many things in common. When we realize that and look out for each other, that's the most beautiful way to live together. So all these talking bubbles say, today Dr. Goodall's work has grown, reminding people everywhere that we all share this earth every day. When we protect the planet, we protect each other. Even now, along with the Jane Goodall Institution, she's working to save endangered species, including her beloved chimpanzees, while also taking care of our environment. With more than 150,000 groups of young people in 130 plus countries, the Roots and Shoots Network connects youth of all ages who share a desire to create a better world. Give them a call and you can be an environmentalist too. Want to work with animals one day? Watch your favorite animals and see what they do. Make notes, read books about them. They're so much like us. And that was Jane there saying all those things. I am Jane Goodall, and I see so much that we have in common. Watch, observe, be patient. I'll teach you this. We don't own this earth, we share it. Listen to the feelings in your heart. We are responsible for animals around us. We must take care of them. When one of us is in trouble, be it a human, creature, or nature itself, we must reach out and help. When we do that, we build a bridge that will carry all of us. And that is the end of I Am Jane Goodall. So remember, find one fact from the reading, write it down on a lined piece of paper, and then bring it back to school tomorrow, and we can read them all and talk about who Jane Goodall was and what she did. Have a great rest of your evening. I can't wait to see all of you tomorrow. Bye.